I'm going to show you how to self-host your very own email list manager using listmonk, which is a popular open source tool that helps you manage your email campaigns. And by the end of this video, we'll have it linked to your SMTP email provider or Gmail if you don't have one, and send out your very first newsletter to your mailing list. We're going to get right into the tutorial in just a moment, but before we do, I wanted to make you aware that yes, while listmonk is free, it does have some drawbacks such as limited features and technical complexities. So I wanted to introduce you to a much more powerful and user-friendly solution. Omnisend, the sponsor of this video, makes it easy to manage your email marketing with advanced features such as a drag and drop automation editor and also audience segmentation, which allows you to categorize your subscriber list into smaller, more targeted groups. Unlike listmonk, which requires a technical setup and ongoing maintenance, Omnisend is fully cloud-based, which eliminates most security concerns and the need to manage a server yourself. You can focus on your business while Omnisend handles the rest. Plus, you can get started for free without a credit card. Omnisend's free plan supports up to 250 contacts and lets you send up to 500 emails per month. And with a 24/7 customer support team that on average has reply times of less than 4 minutes, you'll always have help when you need it. So if you're looking for a robust, hassle-free email marketing solution, be sure to check out Omnisend with my link in the description below and use code TONY for a special discount. Thank you, Omnisend, for sponsoring this video. All right, let's get started here. I'm going to install listmonk on a cloud server, but you can install it on a local server if you have one. If not, I have some free cloud credits for you down below. Okay, so I'm here in my Kamatera dashboard. That is my cloud server that I'm going to use for this. You can use any cloud server. And under here, I'm going to create a new server. And then you can pick a location that's closest to you. I'm going to stick with New York, United States. And then we're going to install this on top of an Ubuntu operating system. Let's choose the latest version, which is 24.04 at the time of this recording. And then as far as the server specs, we're going to pick availability. We only need one CPU core, 1 gigabyte of RAM, and you can go all the way up to 20 gigabytes of SSD disk space before the price changes. So let's do 20 gigs. And that is genuinely more than enough, because if you come here to the official listmonk website, we can come down here to where it talks about the performance of it. And this really shocked me. CPU usage is a fraction of a single core with peak RAM usage of just 57 megabytes. So this really is not a resource intensive application. So this will do. Okay, the only other thing we want to change in here is to set a password. So I'm going to do that here and validate it. And then I'm going to call my server Tony. So let's go ahead and create the server. And when that's finishing in just a couple minutes, I'll catch back up with you. Okay, the server is up and running at this IP address, as you can see here. And the first thing I want to do, and this is completely optional, is to associate this IP address with a domain name. If you have a domain name, you can follow along. If you don't, there's also the option to use either the IP address itself throughout this tutorial, or you can use this host name that they have here if you're using Kamatera as well. So what I'm going to do is copy this IP address and come into my domain name registrar, which is Squarespace at this time. And I'm going to go into the DNS settings. This will look a little bit different from you if you're not using Squarespace, but just go ahead and find your DNS settings. And then what we want to do is add an A record. So we're going to click type A, and we're going to associate that with the IP address. Now, I have a website at tonyteaches.tech, but I want listmonk to run at a domain name called mail.tonyteaches.tech. So for the host, I'm going to type mail here and then go ahead and save that. Okay, next let's try to access the server with the domain name. Again, if you're not using a domain name, you can just access it with the IP address directly. So in order to do that, if you're on a Mac, you can open up the terminal application. And if you're on Windows, you can use PuTTY. I have a bunch of videos on this channel about how to access a remote server. So if you're not sure about this step, go ahead and check that out first. I'll have a link down below. Otherwise, let's go ahead and use SSH. And the username is going to be root at either the IP address or the domain name. So mine's mail.tonyteaches.tech. Hit enter. Go ahead and type yes, you want to continue. And then the password that we just added in the cloud dashboard, go ahead and either type or paste that in. hit enter, and now we are logged into the remote server. First thing we want to do is do a update and an upgrade, so we can do apt update. Okay, and finally let's do an apt upgrade to make sure we have the latest and greatest software. That'll be 406 megabytes of disk space. Type capital Y, hit enter, and we'll let that do its thing. All right, that has finished, as you can see here. Next up, we want to, instead of using root user, which is a security concern, let's add a user. And I'm just going to call him listmonk, and we're going to give him a password, another strong, unique, random password. So go ahead and type that in and then retype it. And these values don't really matter too much. All right, so as you can see, we are the root user right now. Let's go ahead and switch the user over to listmonk, and now we are the listmonk user. So next, let's go ahead and download listmonk onto this server. We're going to come back here to the listmonk.app official webpage, and at the very top they have a download section. And what we want to do is download the Linux binary. So as you can see, this is going to download a tar.gz file. What we're going to do is just copy that link address and come back to our server. And we're going to use wget to download that binary onto the computer, or I guess the compressed file. So we'll do that. And now we can see that is in our directory. What we're going to do is decompress that. So we'll do tar-zxf and then the name of the file, hit enter, and now you can see that has been decompressed into the same directory. We don't need that compressed file anymore, so let's remove that with rm, and now we just have the binary, a license, and a readme file. The first thing I want to do is execute the listmonk binary, and we're going to say --new config. And what that's going to do is generate a new configuration file that we can edit to our preferences. So let's go ahead and open that up. I'm going to use the Vim text editor. You can use any other text editor that you want. I know Nano is a little bit more user-friendly, but if you want to learn Vim, I have other videos about that on this channel. All right, so in this file, there's a couple things that we want to change. If you are using an IP address, change localhost to that IP address. If you're using a domain name, change it to the domain name that you picked. So I'm going to change mine to tonyteaches.tech. And then we want to take note of the database information. So the username is listmonk. The password is listmonk. I'm going to change that, and I recommend that you change it to something, again, strong and random. Okay, so if you're using Vim, we're good with those changes. So let's hit escape, shift:\WQ, and then enter. And now the next thing we want to do is set up the database. So let's go ahead and do this as the root user again, since he has more permissions than the listmonk user. So we'll type exit. Now we're logged in as root again. And what we're going to do is install using apt the PostgreSQL package. Go ahead and do that. Okay, that package has been installed, and that comes with a user called Postgres. So let's switch over to that user with su-postgres, hit enter. Now, as you can see, we are the Postgres user. And what we're going to do is create a database user with create user. I'm going to call him listmonk, as was in the configuration file. And we're going to make that an interactive. And the password for that listmonk user will be the password that we put in the config file. So go ahead and type that in or paste it, confirm it. Should it be super user? No. Create databases? No. And create more new roles? No. Okay, so let's also create the database, which is, as the configuration file said, was called listmonk as well, and associate that with a listmonk user. Oops, and I made a mistake there. It's not -0, it's -O for create database. Okay, so we're done with the listmonk user. We're done with the Postgres user, and we're done creating the database. So let's get out of that, and let's log back in as the listmonk user. And finally, let's install listmonk with /listmonk --install. So this is just saying this will wipe any existing listmonk tables. That's okay because we just created that database. So go ahead and type Y, hit enter. And that was really quick. As you can see, it says the setup's complete. Run the program and access the dashboard at mail.tonyteaches.tech:9000. Let's go ahead and do that. The first thing we need to do is run the program as it says. So in order to do that, we just do /listmonk. Hit enter, and as you can see, the program is running here. There's an HTTP server, start it. So I'm going to go back into my web browser and go to mail.tonyteaches.tech:9000, and there we can see the web page load just fine. Let's try to log in. I'm going to hit this login button, and we don't have a admin user associated with this yet, or just a user in general. So let's go ahead and create that. Okay, so I filled out my information. I'm going to click continue. And as you can see, we are now logged into the listmonk dashboard at our domain name, port 9000/admin. Now, the one problem we're going to run into really quickly is we're just running this binary on the terminal command line. So if I exit out of this with Control C and try to come back to the web browser and reload the page, it's gone away because the web server is not there anymore. The listmonk application is not running. So what we're going to do is set up a service in Ubuntu to automatically start up that listmonk server. So if the server restarts for whatever reason, the web server, the cloud server that we're running on top of, if that restarts, it'll automatically boot up, and there shouldn't be any issues as far as accessing the website. So let's go ahead and do that. We just want to check a couple things. So right now we're working out of the listmonk /home/listmonk directory, and in here, like we already know, is our listmonk binary. So what we want to do is to create a systemd file. Okay, so we're going to go to systemd system, and then we're going to call it listmonk.service. So this is a new file. I'll have some code snippets for you down below. This is kind of what mine's going to look like. So we have our listmonk service. It depends on the internet, the network being up and running. And it's going to be running out of the listmonk directory, which we just saw, and the binary is in there, and it's called listmonk. The user it's going to use is listmonk, and it's just going to always start up. So let's go ahead and save that. And my bad, as you could see, we don't have the permissions to save this file, so we're going to go back out of this. We're going to quit without saving, and we're going to go back to our root user and make that same exact file. So I'm going to copy that and paste in the same exact service file, and this time we should be able to save the file no problem. Perfect. So we created the service file. Let's go ahead and start it up. So in order to do that, we can do systemctl status listmonk just to see if it's up and running. It is not. So in order to first start it up, we have to enable it. So let's go ahead and do systemctl enable listmonk. Okay, now we can start it. So systemctl start listmonk. And now let's check the status again. As you can see, it is active and running. So let's test it out. As you can see, there is no need to have the application running on the command line. It's running in the background. Let's go back to our web browser, refresh the page, and we can access the listmonk dashboard no problem. Next up, there's a couple configuration settings that we have to take care of. So let's go into the settings tab and click on settings. And under here, the root URL, we want to change that either to the IP address of the domain name. So for me, it's going to be mail.tonyteaches.tech. We're going to get rid of these admin email notifications that at mysite.com. We don't need them. And then the default from email, we're going to do, I'm just going to say for me, ttt no reply at tonyteaches.tech. And the thing about this, this email address should exist. Don't put a fake one here. I do have this as an email alias in Google Workspace, so that's why that'll work for me. Let's go ahead and save that. And then over here in the SMTP tab, what we want to do is to now associate our listmonk application with an SMTP server, or like I said in the beginning of this video, if you don't have an SMTP server or service, you can use Gmail. Anybody can access Gmail for free, or I use Google Workspace. It's very similar, they just have different rate limits. So I'm going to set mine up with my Google account. Now, in order to do that, we want to go to this URL, myaccount.google.com/app_passwords, and make sure you're logged into your Google account. And what we want to do is to create an app password. Now, what is an app password? An app password is basically a one-time password that's associated with an application. And I don't mean one time as in one-time use. I mean, this app password allows you to access certain features of your Google account, such as Gmail, and without knowing my actual password for my logging into Google or my Gmail or my Google Workspace. So let's call this listmonk. We'll create that app password, and this is what that looks like. So I'm going to copy that, and I don't know why they put these spaces in here between every 4 characters. We don't want them. They don't actually exist in the password. So when we use it, make sure you get rid of those extra spaces in between. So click done. Make sure you note that down. And we're going to come back here into listmonk, and we're going to, instead of using the custom SMTP server, we're going to disable that. Come down here and enable the Gmail one. The username is going to be however you log into your Gmail account. So for me, Tony at tonyteaches.tech. The password is going to be your app password that we just created. So we'll paste that in, and everything else should be by default correct. So I'm going to come down here and test the connection. I'm going to send it to another email account that I have called careerquitter@gmail.com. And let's go ahead and send that email. It says the test message has been sent. So let's go to that inbox and see if we got anything. And we did. So there it is. It's from no reply at tonyteaches.tech, and it just says test connection. So everything looks like it's working. One last thing we want to do as far as configuration is concerned is to come back here into our listmonk dashboard and make sure we save those changes. Now that we have all that configuration stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the meat of things and ultimately send a newsletter to our email list. So back here in our listmonk dashboard, what we're going to do is basically go through a lot of these options on the left hand side here. We already saw the dashboard. What we're going to look at next is lists. So right now there are 2 lists that come kind of pre-packaged with the listmonk application. We don't really need any of these, so let's get rid of both of them. And what I'm going to do is make a list for a newsletter. Let's pretend we're going to make a newsletter and send it out to our email list. So we're going to do that. Click up here, new. We're going to call it newsletter. It's going to be public so that people can sign up for it. And opt-in is either single opt-in or double opt-in. Single opt-in pretty much is an instant sign up. If somebody puts their email in, they're instantly signed up for the list. Double opt-in means they'll get an email, they'll have to confirm it to be part of that list. So I like that double option. You can fill out tags or description if you want. Go ahead and click on save. And there we go. We have our newsletter list with 0 subscribers. So how do we get subscribers? Well, one way is through a form, a public sign-up form, a subscription page. So by default, they have one built into the application. It's at this URL. So let's go ahead and check that out. I'm going to open that in a new tab. This is the landing page where somebody would sign up for your email list. Let's go ahead and sign up with Career Quitter, and we'll give them a name, Tony. And the list that they want to sign up for is the newsletter. So let's go ahead and subscribe to that newsletter. And if we come back and open up that inbox again and refresh the page, you can see that we got the confirmed subscription email. And because we did double opt-in, we have to confirm the subscription. So click that. And it says you have been added to the following lists. So let's confirm that, and we are successfully subscribed. Now back here in the listmonk dashboard, we can go to our subscribers list and see that careerquitter@gmail.com is now a confirmed subscriber of that newsletter. So these other 2 here are, again, example dummy accounts. They're not associated with any list, so we can go ahead and get rid of those ones as well. Now on this page, you can also manually add subscribers. So you can either import a list that you have somewhere else or come up here and add a new subscriber manually. I'm going to do one. There's this website called mailtester.com. So I'm going to go there, and it basically allows you to get an email address and send an email to it. So I'm going to copy that email and add it to our mailing list. Just going to call it test. The status of them, you can either do enabled, blocklist it. We're going to keep it enabled. And let's add them to the newsletter list. So we'll save that. And for now, it's not going to send them an email, but later when we do our newsletter campaign, when we send it out to our email list, we'll go ahead back to that tab and check on the status of the email. And on that note, I think it's time to finally send our email campaign. So we can do that down here at this campaigns tab. So let's open that up. And again, we have a test campaign. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. And then let's create our campaign. So the name of the campaign is going to be called, let's just call it First Newsletter. The subject, my very first newsletter. We'll keep the from address the same default one that we set up earlier. And then the list that we want to send this out to is our newsletter list. So you could end up with multiple newsletter, or you could end up with multiple lists, but right now we just have the one with the 2 subscribers. So we're going to send it to our newsletter. And then let's go ahead and click on continue. Now, the content of this message, what is our first newsletter going to look like? Well, you can put whatever you want. Just for demonstrations, let's just do something like this. And to see what that looks like, you can click on the preview button up here, and it's going to have the same default template. You can customize the templates over here. We won't do that in this video, but this is kind of what it looks like, so looks good to me. Let's close that. Let's start our campaign. So what this is going to do is automatically send out this from noreply@tonyteaches.tech to our 2 newsletter subscribers, the newsletter list. So let's go ahead and do that. Start campaign. Yes. And it's actively sending them. It sent 1 of 1 up. So what happened here is I expected there to be 2 emails sent out, but because we only confirmed 1 email subscription with careerquitter@gmail.com and not the mail tester one, only 1 email was sent out. But for the sake of demonstration, this is how an email list would work. It would just send out all the emails to all the list subscribers, one after the other one. So let's go ahead and make sure that that actually did arrive in Career Quitter's mailbox. And we can come back into the Gmail here. And we do have my very first newsletter with the same exact content that we expected. As you can see, listmonk is great, but it does take some work to set up and maintain. So if that's not for you, check out this video next to see how OmniSend easily outshines listmonk with more features, customizable templates, and 0 server maintenance.